Well, after watching Rudy Gobert, who couldn't get along with Donovan Mitchell in Utah, blow up with Kyle Anderson in Minnesota on the eve of the Laker play-in game, I thought, what a break for the Lakers. Lakers have their best harmony of the year. They're all getting along great. They have real defined offense. I'm watching them flying back from, I went skiing for a couple days, and so I got to watch, the Laker game flying back. And they really now know where to go offensively. They've kind of figured out what they are. Now, LeBron played really, really exceptionally well. But considering they threw this thing together at the trade deadline, Darvin Ham obviously makes them a good defensive team, right? But I think their offensive unity and chemistry and harmony, watching them today, they kind of know who should take the shots. If Beasley gives you anything in the play-in game or the postseason, and Minnesota's fighting, so that's not going to play well. And Gobert is just a difficult guy. So I just thought, sometimes the touch of luck, and I felt like, what a break for the Lakers. Minnesota's infighting, perfect.
It even goes further than that, Colin, because I think Jaden McDaniels might very well be the best perimeter defender in all of basketball right now. There's two guys in the NBA that are leaving a body count around the league, just locking down superstars on any given night, and it's Dillon Brooks and Jaden McDaniels. Those are the two guys that have been having the most success. And Jaden McDaniels punched the wall on his way into the locker room at halftime, and he broke his hand, is going to be out. So here's the thing. It's a up in the air single elimination, well, not single elimination, but a one-game sample. So obviously anything can happen. But I want to proceed here under the assumption that the Lakers win on Tuesday. They're a 7-point favorite. Obviously, I understand the reality that they could lose. This is a really good basketball team. 18-8 post-deadline. That is the second best record in the league over that span. Second in defense, fourth in rebounding. So they're physically mauling teams. And they did most of that without LeBron. They're 9-2 since LeBron joined the team. My one concern with the Lakers right now, and this is just a byproduct of the way things kind of broke down the stretch, is 4 of their last 5 games they played against really bad teams. And that tends to kind of breed some bad habits. So I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota got off to a good start in that play-in game just because they're a little more locked in on those details. But I'm really intrigued with this Memphis matchup. And we're going to talk Golden State in a little bit, but because I actually think they kind of dodged a bullet here. But this Laker matchup it makes a lot of sense for the Lakers on a couple of different levels. The Memphis Grizzlies are a team that play a lot of guys that typically don't shoot very well, right? John Morant, you can go underneath screens. Dillon Brooks has been shooting well for a couple of weeks, but he's a guy that I guarantee you Darvin Ham's going to dare to shoot. And then obviously in the front court with Steven Adams out, with Brandon Clark out, you're going to be looking at Xavier Tillman or Jaren Jackson there. The Darvin Ham loves to dare people to shoot. And I think this is a series that actually bodes well for the Lakers there. And then on the other end of the floor, who is the best surgical matchup hunting player in probably the history of the NBA? LeBron James. And so he's going to be calling up Ja Morant to every single conceivable action. He's going to be doing everything in his power to get Dillon Brooks off of him or to get Anthony Davis into favorable matchups. And obviously, there's a long road ahead. If they win, I think they're going to face the Warriors in round 2. If they win that, there's a very good chance they're going to play Phoenix in round 3. If they win that, there's a very good chance you're going to get Boston or Milwaukee at the end of that. So it's a very long road. It's a lot to put on LeBron James and Anthony Davis physically. But here's the deal. You made it to the playoffs-ish, and you're probably going to be a slight favorite in round 1. I'd call that a resounding victory compared to where we were before the deadline.
Well, the other thing is Memphis isn't Cleveland young or OKC or Houston young. But Steven Adams is one of the few guys with some playoff experience, and he's out. So Memphis is fairly young. And I always felt this year that, they're one of those teams built for the regular season because they play hard and they have depth. And you can win a lot of games in this league off playing hard and having 10 guys. It doesn't matter nearly as much. So now they get smaller without Steven Adams, plays right into Anthony Davis's hands, and he's had the best 2-week stretch, arguably, since he's been a Laker. If you take out the bubble, he's been completely dominating. Again, he didn't play particularly well today in terms of total points, but down the stretch, he had a couple of key baskets. So I think you get a Memphis team that's smaller, had injuries, young, And let's be honest, the Ja Morant stuff, still not great. So if you say to me, okay, there's a team in the playoffs that could be a little volatile of all of them, and I'd be like, Clippers because of Kawhi, you never know if he's going to play. Westbrook, they had a fight on their bench. So like Clippers feel very volatile to me. And I think Memphis, as one of the younger playoff teams, Cleveland in the East is very young, but Cleveland doesn't feel immature. Everybody in Cleveland knows exactly what they are and what they do. Donovan Mitchell has really clarified their offense. He takes the last big shot, and everybody knows it. Mobley's your big, he's your young guy, but he knows late in games, they all step aside for Donovan Mitchell. Memphis has some egos. They're chatty. I think the Lakers win that series. I really do, and I think Anthony Davis is going to have a fantastic series without Steven Adams.
Memphis is very dangerous because they have guys that are capable of knocking down shots. Like, here's the thing. If Ja Morant, like, we learned from last year's playoffs, like Desmond Bane, really good, interesting player, excellent shooter, good defensive player, can do some slashing, but he really struggled to beat people off the dribble last year in the playoffs. That's a concern. The playoffs in general will take your weakness and shine the biggest magnifying glass on it. It's what the playoffs do. The same thing with Ja Morant. It's, hey, yeah, you knocked down pull-up threes at 30% this year. That's great. We are going to dare you to take that this year, to the point where we're going to actually try to get into your head by making you think you can't do it. That's the way that these especially these veteran playoff teams try to attack you and make you feel uncomfortable, make you lack confidence. And at the end of the day, like, it all comes down to the physical side of things. Like, LeBron James has to hold up, Anthony Davis has to hold up. But over the course of a playoff series, the team that wins is usually the team that generates higher quality shots in the half court. Who do you trust more to get stops in the half court for 7 games? LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jared Vanderbilt, Austin Reeves, or, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, and Jaren Jackson. And then on the flip side of that, when Memphis has to score against them, I just think the Lakers are going to get better quality shots over the course of the series. Wouldn't be surprised if Memphis jumped up to a 1-0 lead or a 2-1 lead. But I think as the series progresses, the older, more talented team in the Lakers is in the best shape. I want to say this, though. I am a big believer in what Golden State does. But yes, Andrew Wiggins is back. However, he's a rhythm player who has not played really intense competitive basketball for a while. Had they fallen to 7 and drawn that Memphis matchup, I think Memphis would have beat them. That's how much I view the importance of getting Andrew Wiggins up to speed. So It is so critically important that they get this series against Sacramento, a team who's very good and very offensively skilled, has an excellent home court advantage, but they are not the biggest and most athletic team in the world. So Golden State, in their lack of athleticism, will have less of a factor to play in that particular series. And I don't know if you noticed, but Golden State's actually a minus 200 favorite to win that series. That's a pretty significant favorite. If they get out of that series, that buys you from now 3 additional weeks to get Andrew Wiggins up to speed for a potential matchup with Memphis or LA, 2 massive teams that are incredibly athletic and big.
Well,
and at that point, I'd feel better about them.
Well, and Gary Payton just the other night got extended minutes. So now Gary Payton, you can put him on for a good 16 minutes a night. Just put him on De'Aaron Fox and then put Klay Thompson, Dante DiVincenzo. We've talked about this. Golden State's absurdly deep in the backcourt and very thin in the front court. But De'Aaron Fox is their fourth quarter guy. I think he's the best guard in the NBA in the fourth quarter this year in terms of what they call crucial points. So, I saw the other night Peyton played like 18, 20 minutes, and I'm like, that's exactly what they wanted. So Wiggins isn't ready to go at that level. And they'll have to massage that a little because Kuminga's finally now playing real minutes and they're going to take him away. So it's a weird, confluence of events where it's like we need Wiggins desperately, but, Kuminga's actually started to log in 18, 20, 24 minutes and been productive. So now you got to peel him back. So you got to massage that in the locker room. And the chemistry's been weird with the Warriors this year since the Draymond, Jordan Poole inflammation. But I like their matchup in the series. You throw a lot of bodies at Fox. Golden State will have to win a road game, but this is almost, it's a bus ride. I also think this. They'll get the whistle. They know how to manipulate officials. They know how to do the psychological manipulation. I mean, Sacramento is like the little brother down the road to the dynasty. And you can see in spots them being a little overwhelmed and the Warriors, trash talking, getting in their head and getting the favorable whistle. The dynasty does in the first round my entire life. I don't think the league is rigged, but I do think veteran teams manipulate officiating in the playoffs where referees tend to swallow the whistle. You're not going to get that high-octane offense that draws all those fouls. The Warriors can slow it down, speed it up. They'll get the whistle. So I think it's one of these series. It's a really good series for Golden State. There were some real worrisome matchups. Even the Lakers' size could be a huge problem. I think they lucked out.
Well, the Warriors can beat somebody with size. They just need Andrew Wiggins. Like when I say I would have picked Memphis to win in the first round, that's 100% an Andrew Wiggins take. Like that, it's all associated with the fact that he is so imperative to their athletic ceiling that they need to compete in a series against that team. Giving them an extra 3 weeks from now to get there, that's vitally important. The Sacramento, this is a Gary Payton series, in my opinion. And the main reason why is because Sacramento has killed teams all season long with the simple combination of De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis and what they do with their dribble handoffs and the problem it presents for teams because you let De'Aaron Fox get downhill, or if you switch it, Sabonis is one of the best players in the league at beating switches to the basket, and if he draws double teams, he's an excellent passer. So what I like about the Golden State matchup in that series is Draymond Green and Gary Payton. I couldn't conceive possibly mentally a better duo to potentially handle those two guys. And this is, again, what an attribute. And this is why I actually love this move from the deadline. What an incredible attribute to have as a coach, a weapon in your pocket to be able to deploy Gary Payton on the other team's best guard and to know he's going to be able to hold that in check. I don't know if you noticed this the other night, but the Warriors won a game against Oklahoma City, a tough-fought game against Oklahoma City. You might have been skiing, but it was a tough-fought game against Oklahoma City. And in the fourth quarter of that game, Gary Payton shut down Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's one of the best guards in this league. He had a couple of buckets on switches and he drew one foul, but for the most part, Gary Payton shut him down, and it was how Golden State pulled out that game. He is one of the best guards in the league to guard this specific type of matchup, partnering that with Draymond Green. I love this matchup for the Warriors. I would pick them to win in no more than 6 games, but I'm leaning towards 5. And for all the Hoops Tonight listeners out there, we're going to do a full breakdown of this series within the next couple of days where we'll really dive into the X's and O's, but I'm leaning towards picking the Warriors in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think I would take the Warriors in 6. Suns 4 against the Clippers 5. This again really plays into Phoenix's hand. So, Kevin Durant's gotten several games off, so they're sitting him. And here you have an inflamed bench situation where Plumlee gets into a fight. You're already asking Ty Lue, what do you do with Westbrook now? He's great in regular season production. Okay, now we get into situational basketball. What do I do? Paul George isn't available. He would be huge in this series to defend Kevin Durant. So now I've got a little bit of inflammation. How do I use Westbrook, who's not been a great postseason player? What do I do with the Kevin Durant matchup? Like Memphis, there's some depth here, but there's a lot of, to me, this could not, in a weird way, Kevin Durant, between getting hurt in warm-ups and now resting for the last couple of games, you're getting the most rested, healthiest Kevin Durant in years. And I think Phoenix is going to be a handful for the Clippers. I love Phoenix here.
Yeah, I'm really low on the Clippers in general, Colin. I don't know how many times we have to go into the season with everybody preaching that they're one of the favorites for them to not fulfill that, for us to finally learn our lessons. They don't have good rim protection. They don't have good playmaking, and that's 2 vitally important things that you have to succeed in the playoffs. This is what the Clippers are. They are a team with a bunch of wings that are wings in name only that don't move as well as they used to, right? I got a lot of guys like Marcus Morris and Nick Batum and Robert Covington, guys that once upon a time would have been vital, important playoff pieces, but they're just not that anymore. And Covington's out of the rotation. Marcus Morris has been hurt. Batum's okay. But the problem is without Paul George, they simply do not have enough shot creation. There's three guys on the team that can create their own shot: Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and Norman Powell. And Norman Powell's runs hot and cold. I mean, obviously he destroyed the Lakers the other day, but he runs hot and cold. Russell Westbrook, the game has to be going a very specific type of way for him to have impact. And as good as Kawhi Leonard is, and he's made strides as a playmaker, he's a pull-up shot maker. Like, he doesn't pressure the rim super well, and he's not the best passer in the world. So it's like, yeah, he'll get you his 30 by knocking down his pull-up jump shots, but he's not a guy that can really carry an offense over the course of a game. And so what they really are is a team that doesn't have a lot of shot creation. They're a good team, but I don't think they have nearly the playoff ceiling they need without Paul George. I think the Suns are going to make quick work of them.
Yeah, well, and also, the Suns are a team between Durant's health and Chris Paul's age. He had a great game about a week ago, but like he kind of just gave you, hey, I'm not done yet. I'm fine. I'm good here. But they got a huge break because that's a team. Boston, I feel a little bit with Tatum sometimes and Robert Williams' health and Marcus Smart, like they don't need to play together. Like, we know the Celtics are fine. They've been playing together now for years. They need time off. Tatum needs rest. I feel that way with Phoenix. Like Chris Paul and Durant, what they need is like 5 days off those legs going into a playoff series. So I'm with you. Phoenix hasn't lost yet with Durant on the floor. I mean, it's
not a single game.
And it looks really good. That's because Kevin's a high functioning player and Chris Paul's one of the smartest guys in the league. And that's where I think sometimes with Ayton, they've been frustrated. Monty's been frustrated. Chris has. I think sometimes Chris Paul's really demanding on his bigs. Like, he's really hard on them. And so, like, everywhere he goes, the team gets better and the big doesn't like him. But I think Kevin Durant's a unique, I wouldn't call him a big, but a unique four that plays at such a high level of basketball, like really gets the game. I just think him and Chris are going to be magic. And I don't think I really don't. We'll see with Denver. Denver still, believe it or not, despite they've been good for several years, they're still a pretty young team. They don't have a lot of playoff success. So I think Phoenix is going to roll. The NBA playoffs are upon us. 20 teams get in, all trying to get that one crown. For last-minute amazing deals, to watch your favorite NBA team. It can be the Warriors, it could be the Kings, it could be the Sixers, it could be the Bucks. To get great last-minute deals on amazing tickets, check out Game Time, the fastest-growing ticketing app in the United States. It's called Game Time. It doesn't stop, by the way, with the NBA. They've got NHL tickets, Major League Baseball tickets. By the way, those Major League Baseball games, they last 30 minutes less. So get there early. They've also got concerts and comedy shows. They've got everything at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, and the redeem code is Colin, COLIN. $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app, enter the code Colin, COLIN, for $20 off. Here we go. NBA playoffs, baseball season just starting here in April, NHL as well. No matter where you live, get out, have some fun this week and this year. Download the Game Time app, last-minute ticket deals, lowest prices guaranteed.
Phoenix, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but they're a gigantic favorite against the Clippers. I think they're like minus 400 or something insane like that. I do believe they will be favored against Denver as well if they get out of the first round.
Should be.
Vegas is going to look at Phoenix in a conference finals as a favorite in all likelihood, right? So he will be favored in at least 3 rounds and very possibly the 4th round. If Kevin Durant does not win a championship this season with the Suns, will it change the way you look at his career in any way, shape, or form?
No, I think his legacy is fully formed. I do think he can get a little tick up if he won in Phoenix. But, if you go back to Brooklyn, despite it being like an egregiously poor decision to leave the Warriors, he was really successful. I mean, Simmons won't shoot. Kyrie wouldn't play. Harden came in out of shape. You had a rookie head coach with all those big personalities. He was really good. And Kevin gave you 27 a night. It's what he's done his whole career, willing defender. So I look at, from a business standpoint, I didn't like Brooklyn. From a basketball standpoint, I thought he was excellent. If you go to his last 26 starts, he's 23-3. So I think, you know exactly what you're getting with Kevin Durant. It's insane. I mean, the fact that they were competitive in Brooklyn. Nash had never coached. Kyrie, the vaccine. I mean, it's well documented. Nothing, when he came there, they were known as a team with limited talent but chemistry. And that was their strength. Well, they blew that up. They were known as a team that was well coached with chemistry. All right, coach is fired, chemistry's kaput. And Kevin's the only reason they weren't a laughing stock. So I think he's takeout centers, the 12 best players I've ever seen, a better version of Dirk Nowitzki, who's a top 20 player in my estimation. And I think for public opinion and debate shows, Phoenix, if he wins, gives him a boost. But everybody I've ever known in the league is toughest stop in the league, even more so than LeBron. Put him in any team, anywhere, first game out, fits perfectly. LeBron, you've sort of got to readjust, or, he's kind of going to be the orchestra leader. LeBron's going to have the ball in his hands, and he makes everybody better, but not game one. Even he and Wade took 17 games. If you recall, they were 9-7, and they had similar games, but LeBron was better. What do you do with Chris Bosh? It was a weird fit. They were just so hyper athletic. It was so much fun to watch, but it was clunky. And then in year two, I think it was year two, they went on that long winning streak, and they were just so athletic. But like Durant, 2 practices, first game with Phoenix, you're yeah, this works. Second quarter, yeah, this looks great. It'll be fine.
Well, first of all, with that Miami team, there's no doubt it was a clunky fit. I would argue it was a clunky fit almost through to the end, because the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade fit was always a little bit redundant. They were two hyper-athletic playmaking wings that didn't like to shoot jump shots, right? That's just the reality of it. To LeBron's credit, he's gotten better over the course of his career at making his game more malleable, and I believe he's a lot more malleable now than he used to be. Just even with this Lakers squad, it's a very guard-heavy Lakers squad, and he's kind of transitioned into almost a post player, like a big. He sets a ton of screens. He operates out of the post a ton. But the point is, Kevin Durant is on another stratosphere from everybody in the entire league when it comes to plug and play, because of what he can do defensively and because of his ability to play out of any spot on the floor, both with and without the basketball. I 100% agree with you, though. I don't feel any sort of pressure on KD. The dude has just 100% established himself as what he's capable of. I 100% agree with you. All these guys only have the world to gain and nothing to lose, in my opinion. That said, yeah, of course, there's going to be people out there that will jump on that as an opportunity. But you and I have watched Kevin Durant play basketball for almost 2 decades now. And he has just done nothing but win basketball games at the highest level, with exception of situations where you wouldn't expect him to, where, the Russell Westbrook fit was clunky, that Brooklyn fit that you broke down so well. The dude is a certified winner. That stat you just read out, 23-3. How many? I'll have to look it up, but 23-3 streaks happen so incredibly rarely in the NBA. It is so hard to win games that consistently, especially with the amount of parity there is now. If I gave you to ask you to list players from 1 to 40, you'd be reading 35 to 40, and they'd sound like stars to you. That's how much talent is in the league. And he won 23 out of 26 games. That's insane.
The other thing is
he's invincible to me.
Yeah, and Phoenix actually needed him. So it's not only that he goes to Phoenix, but they had a big, they had somebody who has the ball, a mid-range guy, and they had kind of a chill. Devin Booker is a willing. Devin can score 40 or 23. He's not very needy. So it's what they needed was a really talented guy with size, give them more length. Because I don't think DeAndre Ayton qualifies as a great rim protector. He's not like Giannis. That's just not what he is. He's just long. He runs the floor really well. So he really not only is a plug and play guy, but he's kind of what Phoenix needed. More length. And another because Chris Paul has, I think, regressed as a scorer, more scoring, because Ayton's not a consistent scorer. So most great teams have two guys on the team that if they scored 40 in a playoff game, you'd be like, oh yeah, I could see it. Whereas, that's like if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, if they drop 40, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's one of those nights. That's why Milwaukee's interesting, because Chris Middleton's no longer that guy. He's not scoring 40 in a playoff game. Well, Drew Holiday is more of a defender who can score. I could see 28. So they're a weird team. They may just win on depth and experience and size and defense and culture. But I think Kevin Durant fits everywhere, but he's just exactly what Phoenix needed. Because you kind of questioned, if you looked at him this year with Chris Paul pulling back, is what if Booker doesn't have a good night? Where's the scoring come from? Like, they just didn't have enough. And it's like, so when a star comes into a team, there can be animosity. I think Phoenix knew what they weren't, and I think the guys knew what they were, which was like, we need 28 consistently. Well, that's his career average. So it's like it fits so many ways. Like, I think Phoenix is a really smart team, and everybody knew we just need. That's why you go out and make that move if you're a new owner. Like, everybody was like, that's exactly what we need.
I 100% agree. You broke down a very important piece. DeAndre Ayton is not a top-tier rim protector. We've broke this down. You and I have talked about this like 2 or 3 times, but you can't win a championship without top-tier defensive talent in the front court. Kevin Durant provides length and shot blocking around the rim that DeAndre Ayton can't bring. And then it really was this simple. When they get to the biggest stage, whether it was against Luka last year in the second round or whether it was against Giannis in the finals in the last round, when they run into a real superstar, Devin Booker and Chris Paul have been incapable of meeting them at that level, even as a duo. And Kevin Durant crosses that box, is specifically in the areas you talked about, scoring the basketball, where Devin Booker would be able to get some buckets on Drew Holiday. Chris Paul fell apart over the course of that series. Same thing over the course of the Mavericks series. So I 100% agree with you. What did you make of the Dallas punting those last 2 games of the season?
I think I was reading some Dallas media reports. It's a S show. It's a mess. Well, they hired a guy from Nike who's never been really a GM, but he was in the basketball division, very smart guy, a relationship guy. And now they put him in charge of running, basketball ops. And, I like Mark Cuban. I think he's really smart. He tends to be what I would call a tech optimist. He has so much confidence in his intelligence that he takes big swings, and he hits, his pharmaceutical company's brilliant. I understood. It was funny when they went and got Kyrie Irving, I applauded it. I said, I like the swing. This is going to be an atrocious defensive team. These are 2 of the worst. Kyrie is an abysmal defensive player. And so when people kind of embrace this as a championship team, I'm like, guys, the Warriors and Celtics were the 2 best defensive teams in the league. Like, you can't win that way. You can't just score your way. You can't have to score 126 a night. It just doesn't work that way in this sport. And I think people think it's that. And then you if you've ever had a buddy who goes and plays in the NBA, it's like, man, they grind you. There's a lot of contact in this league. In the playoffs, it doubles down on it. That's why, Kyrie pre and post LeBron, he gets pushed around. It was like LeBron was a little bit of a bodyguard, and you have to surround Kyrie with certain elements. I also think increasingly Luka's a moody player, and he's going to be really hard to find the Robin. We talked about this. The hardest thing in basketball is to find the Giannis, that once in a franchise player. So the Bucks have done it twice. Lou Alcindor and Giannis. They got a championship one back in 1971, right? Milwaukee. And they got one with Giannis. It's not a great free agent hub, so you have to kind of build a culture. And then eventually, Kareem, I want out. I want to go west. He did. And so I think when Luka came into the league, there was this sense you could pair him with a lot. So they try the slasher, Porzingis. They don't like each other. Mm-hmm. And then they tried Jalen Brunson, and they're like, well, they don't really fit. Well, Jalen's been like an MVP guard play in New York. Well, let's try Kyrie. Well, now Kyrie doesn't perfectly work for him. We're falling in love with this great hyper offensive player. Moody, difficult, needs ball, won't defend. Is he going to end up Carmelo Anthony, where he has this early success in Denver and never really then galvanizes people. I mean, you start looking at the great players of all time, everybody needed a running mate. Like Magic galvanized people, LeBron galvanized people. Michael didn't, but he found a running mate, right? Like some guys don't do that, but they find a guy. Tim Duncan finds his Tony Parker. Steph finds his Clay. Like, it's way harder to find a two because it's not just the player, it's the temperament. McHale was the college, you wouldn't remember this because you're young, he led the nation in rebounding. He was known as a defensive guy that rebounded at Minnesota, and he came to the NBA with all these weird moves, and he was super long, kind of an unorthodox looking scorer, but he was a great rebounder, a shot blocker in college, and Bird was the scorer. Well, McHale could have scored more. But he okay, I'm going to be part of this. Bosh in Miami, I want to be part of this. Kevin Love in Cleveland with LeBron, I want to be part of it. Like, Luka's going to make you feel small. He's not going to help you on the defensive end. You're going to get the ball late in the shot clock with him. I think Luka's harder to play with than people think. And you say, well, Michael was difficult, but Michael got the right coach, also found a very willing Robin, and then he had high-functioning players. Kerr and Paxson became GMs. Like, they knew how to play with Michael. They understood Michael was the guy. Those Bull teams had really high... B.J. Armstrong becomes a power agent. Like, you had a lot of guys around Michael that knew how to play the game and appeal to his senses and his alpha. That's hard. Like, that Luka's going to be hard to play with, and I think we have to come to terms with it.
He's entering a very important phase of his basketball development because he's starting to just slightly plateau a little bit. And, you know, I love the way you broke it down. Like, you have to be willing to buy into this like larger concept of the team. Because, for instance, like, you can break it down on a simple math level. Okay, Luka, high pick and roll is worth 1.2 points per possession. Therefore, if we run it 100 times in a game, we're going to score 120 points. That's great. You know what I mean? But there is a basketball team is a living organism, and all of the pieces fit together. And like, it would behoove Luka to start to learn how to adjust his game to fit better with others because of the specific fact that he will be on more talented teams as time go along. This has worked. He went to the Western Conference Finals last year. I'm not trying to criticize him overall in terms of what he's capable of, but the reality is like, hey, if you give the ball to Kyrie and maybe instead of running a high pick and roll where you dribble the air out of the basketball for 17 seconds, maybe you run down the floor and come off of a wide screen and use that as a dribble handoff and get downhill. You can use your same skill set, that same vision, that same size and strength and shot making ability more within the flow of what a team can do as a unit together, and then embracing getting in shape to be able to be a more of an impact player defensively. I think, look, here's the thing. The pouting, I absolutely believe that has a negative effect on the psyche of a basketball team. When they see their star constantly bitching and moaning at the refs, and when he's constantly not running back on defense, and you can tell his head is not in it. I loved how you brought up Carmelo Anthony, because that's such an interesting comp to me. Because,
I mean, they're obviously different positions, but... And everybody said they loved Carmelo. Man, it was about Carmelo getting his shot. He wouldn't even adjust to a 3-point shot. Like, he was bizarrely rigid in his style of play.
100%. Like, they're not the same player, obviously. It's more just relative to the rest of the league and the way his progression went. Like LeBron was a little bit better than Carmelo, and over the years, LeBron kept getting better, and Melo just kind of stayed the same. I mean, he got moderately better in some areas of his offensive skill set, but he never became an impact defensive player. He never became a top-tier playmaker. He never evolved in those other areas of his game, and LeBron
was threatened.
Yes.
Yes, and I think Luka at times feels a little threatened. First of all, he's from outside of the country, so players like that, I mean, you have to ingratiate yourself to a new culture and a new country. That's really difficult. The other thing, Jason, is if you look at Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas, probably as beloved a player as the league's had. Everybody loved Dirk. Not everybody loves Luka. He's got a much more temperamental, moody personality. So he's naturally going to create some disharmony in the room. He's just a moody guy. Dirk wasn't. So the Mavericks multiple times switched pieces with Dirk. Almost everything worked with Dirk. It just didn't get a championship. But like there was no like clashes of culture. Everybody liked Dirk. Nobody likes Luka. Like, it's a big difference. I think Luka's a better player, but at this point, somebody said this years ago to me. They're like, in football, halftime, defense goes to the right, offense goes to the left. In baseball, a third of the team's in the bullpen. It's 13 dudes on the bench, every practice, on that plane. Like, if one guy's music's too loud on the plane, now you have headphones now, but years ago, it's like one guy can ruin an NBA locker room. And if the star is difficult, it's a bad locker room. I think the Mavs are a bit of an S show right now. And I think Luka, I mean, again, they're gonna put the PR people to work in Dallas. It's all good. Luka's gonna love it. But when you watch him play, he aggravates me at times with his barking to the officials, like on every play.
It's such a love-hate relationship for me because as a basketball fan, there's so many things with Luka that I'm drawn to. Like, he is one of the best players that I've ever seen in terms of beating people off the dribble without an athletic advantage, which is so hard to do. It's kind of the Austin Reeves thing. Like, it's all misdirection and like having every move irrevocably attached to a counter move that's equally as effective and never telegraphing your moves. And like Luka, there's so many things that I love about his game, and I hate watching him because of his approach, not only with the heliocentric, just dribble the air out of the basketball every time, but also with the attitude stuff. And again, it's a crossroads. He's either going to be the Carmelo of this era, or he's going to be an all-time great. And what's interesting is if you would have asked everybody 2 years ago, or I'll even just say last year during the Western Conference Finals, who are the two best players, that you'd want for the next 10 years? It'd be Giannis and Luka, and it'd be pretty close, right? Like, they'd be neck and neck with a slight edge to Giannis. I hope it doesn't end up being one of those situations where Giannis just dramatically separates himself. I think it could. Because Luka plateaus. That's a problem, potentially.
Well, I mean, listen, LeBron was more physically gifted than Carmelo, but as they drifted apart, a lot of it was LeBron got along with more players, could play with more players, was more amenable to different styles. I mean, Miami had no size. He and Wade were duplication. He never liked Mario Chalmers. I mean, it was like they threw him with Ray Allens and Shane Battiers and Mike Millers, and LeBron made it work. At the time, Spoelstra was a kid coach, and LeBron made it work. And then he goes to Cleveland again, and he makes it work. And he goes to Los Angeles, and he makes it work. If you give LeBron, I mean, J.R. Smith was fun, but I think people forget he and LeBron were pretty good together. And J.R. Smith was weird and, a little eccentric, and some viewed as difficult, kind of an ISO act, super talented. LeBron made it work. LeBron and him were close, despite that one timeout, right, that they called. So, and I think Giannis sort of is amenable to a lot of different teammates and players. Luka so far isn't. Like, I mean, look at, they just bring in Jay Crowder and then Joe Ingles and Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton was like, they stole him, I think, from like Detroit. He's worked with all of them. He works with everybody. And Brook Lopez, another big, he's not threatened at all. Like, it matters a lot. And it's just like, I always felt Carmelo was threatened. Luka feels a little threatened. Giannis never does. LeBron never has. I mean, God, he goes into Miami. It's D-Wade City. And it's like, all right, let's go for it. I mean, he could have picked anywhere to go, right? He goes to probably the single most beloved player in any city. I'll go to your city. I mean, that was rife with issues. Could you have seen Carmelo going down there and making it work? His insecurities would have just flourished. So I'm not anti-Luka, but it's just like we've got to have, I think we're moving to the second phase, which is, okay, not all these issues are Carmelo Anthony's teammates. Some are Carmelo.
Yeah, it's time. It's time to make the adjustments. And it's not over. Like, to be clear, there's a huge reason why they punted these last 2 games. It got them down to the 10th worst record in the league, which saved them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, from a pick protection that will give them a first-round pick in this draft that they would not have had otherwise had they made the play-in. You attach that pick to Tim Hardaway Jr.'s salary, and you bring in, a do-everything forward, and they target some guys, on the fringes this summer. They can absolutely be a relevant team next year, but they will only go as far as Luka can take them, and he won't take them very far unless he starts to identify some of these issues. I think that's all very fair criticism. All right, so I have been told that we have a caller.
All right. Hi, guys. Who's the best team out east?
Ooh, you want to take this one, Colin?
Boston matches up with Milwaukee really well, but I think Milwaukee feels like a playoff team. Old, defense, size, culture. They just feel like they're just going to wear on you in a series. I think Boston matches up really well with them, but you and I know Boston's a totally different team defensively if Robert Williams is in or not, and he's hurt a lot, and they get small really fast without him. Milwaukee feels like they've got at least one more championship. I think Chris Middleton he's not the same player that he was even a year ago. So I think this could be their last one, and they may have to start. They're starting to look old and unathletic, and I think this is their last year of this group. Then they got to make some big swings here and move some pieces. They are really, really, in fact, they are the oldest team in the league. But I think for one more year, they're the best team.
It's funny. I was so on the fence about this, and even especially after that Boston just destruction of Milwaukee in Milwaukee, I was even leaning slightly towards Boston. And then, you know what I kept coming back to, Colin, is how many times last year during the playoffs did we watch Boston and they looked like that? And then followed it up the next night, not playing good basketball. And I'd look at it and I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, actually, when I really think about it, they were making some tough shots and they were feeling themselves and they played a good game. But the reality is it's more or less that same Boston vibe that I got from last year in the playoffs. And so even though I'm so squarely on the fence, and we'll see how I feel about this 4 weeks from now when they inevitably face each other in the Eastern Conference Finals. But now I'm like 51% on the Milwaukee side of things. I just feel like they're ever so slightly the safer bet.
I mean, Jay Crowder's not the same player. Joe Ingles is averaging 7 a game. Middleton's regressed. I mean, they really are on most nights. Giannis and Drew Holiday, and you just hope somebody hits shots. But I mean, they're falling apart. I mean, it's and by the way, we've seen a lot of teams like this. Like at the end, I mean, D Wade couldn't play back-to-backs in Miami, right? Like Mike Miller couldn't defend. Battier was about ready to go. Haslam was old. Well, he's been old for 20 years. But it's like, if you remember those Miami teams.
He had 20 plus points today. He had like 24 points today. I don't know if you saw
I know. But if you look at those Miami teams, they were small and got old really fast. But they still got to the finals. And I kind of feel like that I think Milwaukee's just good enough to win, but they're going to have to make some moves in the offseason. They look slow a lot.